Good day, my name is Elementary, and today I'm going to explain the reasons why we are currently going through what is called a um, economic depression. Right, the depression is caused by three compounding elements, right? And I will explain why I have come to this conclusion at the end. Now, as you can see, there are three reasons. Number one is credit, number two is taxes, and number three is foreign trade. These three reasons make up the basis of what's killing our markets, and there's a lot more that goes into explaining it besides just saying that these are the reasons that are killing our market. So I'll explain the first one. When you have credit creation, you actually depreciate your economy. For example, if your economy has $9 billion, right, or $9 trillion, and you make out loans, you are now making 9 million worth more than it is worth. That means that 9 million has become worth less. That 9 million is being stretched across however many times, and it's actually being stretched out 9 times its figure. So that makes it worth $81 trillion. So your economy now has $81 trillion, but it's only actually worth $9 trillion worth of your economy originally. That is what it's doing. It's depreciating the economy because of the 10% that is being reserved for holding the assets. So at the end of the day, this year first degrades your economy, and on that degraded economy, some money is saved, which makes a big problem. That's because depreciated assets, and that's going to increase your volume. However, I don't understand how bad it can get, but I do know that it can really shrink the value of your market. For example, what was 9 trillion is now going to be stretched across 150 or 200 trillion, or it's going to be 100 to the 9, which is going to be 900 trillion, and you sitting at 9 trillion in value, you have now 1% of your value in your economy. And when that catches up to you is the moment your credit fails. That's the moment that people stop being able to pay it back, and you now have what is called a credit collapse. It can happen in some societies. It actually happened in America recently. I'm from South Africa, so I'm not going to be able to explain that there in 100% detail, but here's the exact understanding that I have behind it. They had a massive amount of money loaned out, and people started calling in their assets in order to liquidate their debt. So that's their credit. They're trying to crash out their debt by pulling in their funds. But when individual A pulled in their funds, they caused that entire 100 trillion to be based on not 9 trillion but now 8 trillion. And then as it kept crashing, they went from 8 to 7 to 6 to 5 to 4 to 3 to 1. And when it went to 1, now that figure is way too unbalanced. And they started dropping and they went to 900 billion, and now it's 0.1% of the value. And now the economy is really unbalanced on it, and that company can't hold it. The bank is telling them they need to pay out 1% of their 10% of their debts immediately, and they don't have that figure of cash. And as a result of it, the entire system falls through. That is what you call a credit collapse, as far as I understand it, because now everybody's going to ask for their money back, and that figure is going to shrink at a more and more rapid rate until $1 is worth the entire owing, and that is $1 is worth 100 trillion. And yeah, it actually no, $100 trillion is worth $1. It's a negative trading. They're actually paying more for their own economy, and that is what you call a credit collapse. That is the first thing which negatively affects our economies, and it's one of the reasons that I know that this is the problem is because of the old Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire and the Islamic empires did not have credit creation. And this here goes simply. If you want an item, a man pulls out his assets, he purchases the item for you. So that means that 0% of the asset is liquidated, right? So it's 100% assets. You got 100 rand worth of assets, but you're gonna pay him 15% of its value as a profit. So he is making on 100 rand, because I'm from South Africa, he's making 15 rand because it's 115 rand that you're gonna pay him. And that is how they handle their credit situation. So they didn't have the whole system of usury, which is what we actually paying. It's called usury. So it actually is in that way that it doesn't cause a negative, but there is a negative to it. There is no real benefit behind lending, because when a person defaults on a loan and fails to pay, you don't charge them more. For example, if Mr. McDonald has a $5 million loan and he fails to pay 1 month, at the end of that month, however much is still owed on that $5 million is still owed. It doesn't go up by a cent. There is no positive to lending your money. It's just a better way of spreading your money out instead of holding it all in one place. It makes it harder for it to be stolen from you. So yeah, that's the whole idea behind that form of credit. Theft is one of the worst things in that market because it depreciates the economy at that point. So theft is really, really bad at that point. And in the credit market, theft is even worse because if $1 million is stolen or $1 trillion is stolen, it instantly ricochets on the market and it makes everything worth less and less and less, and people need more and more to survive because that value is becoming less. And we don't see this anymore because they don't teach us about credit creation. It's a very simple way to explain it. You own less money, and the more that you take out loans from the bank, the less everybody owns. So you become more poor the more is owed because you're actually owing more credit than you are earning. So for example, America, with the amount of crazy credit they have, they were at 20 trillion in owing with about 900 billion worth of assets to back up their debt. So yeah, they were at a really ridiculous rate, and now they're going up to 80 trillion worth of owing on less than I believe it's 600 billion. That's because the economy is shrinking. That's because of the negative effects. It's depreciating the economy, and more is being loaned, so it's becoming worth less and less and less and less, and it's shrinking down till they actually have a finite figure. That's also because of the other two, which I'm about to explain. Now, when it comes to taxes, this is one of the more crazy ones. Now, taxes have two negative impacts. They hyperinflate your economy, and because of the hyperinflation, they hyperinflate the economy again because everybody needs more money, so everybody asks for more, and it's a hyperinflation upon hyperinflation that eventually drives you to a complete market collapse. So yeah, taxes are a negative. And once again, the old Ottoman Empire teaches us this lesson. They didn't charge standard taxes and these types of taxes. They charged tolls, and they charged a service fee on the regards of war. Now, you might be thinking, but they need tax for our basic services. And here's something which I know for a fact, right? In order to get water to 15 million people, the entire facility with all the pipes, with everything that's needed for the brand new system that will last 20 years is 250 million in my currency, that's rands, right? And this year will be done across 20 years, so we'll divide it by 20. So this is what it costs per year. This is going to be divided by 12 because this is going to be per month, and this is going to be divided by 15 million people, who is the target market. So that would mean that for every person you need 7 cents, right? It makes it really ridiculously cheap. So even if they charged you 50 cents, which I'm going to show you at this point, right? 0.5 times 15 million first, because that's the first reduction that we went through, right? Times 12 times 20. So 1.8 billion. That is what comes out of it at the end of the day. How much of profit did they make? Way too much for you to accumulate. And in terms of salary, they can even pay 500 million worth of salaries across that period, and it wouldn't really impact this year too negatively. So if they charged it at a lower rate, like 40 cents or 50 cents per liter of not per liter, per person's usage of water complete, the economy would still balance. But the reason why it doesn't balance is because we have leaks in our system, and that is we pay excessive salaries and we balance all of our systems as one. That means when we have a failing system with theft, like the power utility in South Africa, we end up hemorrhaging funds from A to B, from B to C, and it just links up and it destroys everything. I know the figure that I have on the entire production of water is a bit skewed, but this is what it would cost raw if we didn't have taxes added to it, which is kind of ironic because this is one of the reasons why I'm saying that we don't need it. So at the minimum charges, they can cover everything. And then in case you want to talk about electricity, there's 40 billion. Yeah, that's million, that's billion, right? And this year is divided by 25 years, ironically, and that is divided by 12, right? This is going to give you what it comes out to across it, and we divide this year by 15 million people. Right, so this is what you need to pay per month in order to keep all of those systems going. It costs 20 billion, with about 20 billion worth of fuel across its entire lifespan of 20 years. Thereafter, it needs replenishment, blah, 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 blah. So this is what you need to pay per person in order to make sure that it's all going. So about 9 Rand, and we hemorrhaging funds from this year at a rapid rate. Most people know that what I'm talking about right now seems absurd, because we're paying almost, let's see, 1,500 is how many times this figure? If I make it 10, if I make it 15 to make it easier, 10 times is 150, 100 times that amount is what we're paying per person, and that is across the board from 15 people. So that says that we have a massive inflation of the price of the service. That's because the government is involved and they're increasing their salaries through these services. And this year holds true for just about every service. They actually cost almost nothing to run. And if you're counting it, let's say that we go with 15 plus 1 for water, plus 1 for sewage, which is going to have plus 1 for its handling, plus, let's see, that's water, sewage, refuse removal. Because of the number of people, it's also another plus 1, right? So we've got 19 Rand per month would give us all of our basic services. Police would be a little bit more expensive, maybe about 50 per month, and hospitals altogether, to keep them running with basic salaries, would keep it 120, right? So 120. So let's work out how much this equals to what they really require. Times 12 times 25 times 15 million people. Yeah, that's about what they need across 20 years. And okay, that's 25 years actually. So yeah, you can see that this is crazy. So we just divide it by 25 and we'll show how much they need every year from us. And yeah, this figure seems ridiculous, but how much do they need from each of us? Remember, there's 15 million of us. Oh, 1,140 a year. Divide that by 12 and you get the monthly figure, 120 Rand. It is a joke of a figure, and that is why I really have a problem with taxes to start with. They don't really need your taxes for your services. They use it for other purposes. And that was just a quick show of it, and that's the actual costs at their base level. That's because I was thinking about building a city, and I decided to research every single aspect of a city from scratch. But now for the big negative of tax. You have an item that's 1,000 Rand, $1,000, whatever it is. South Africa has a 15% tax rate. So we want to figure out how much is tax and what the item's actually costing me. So divide by 115 times 100. Right, so this is what it's costing me. So I'm going to recreate it as 870. I'm going to minus 100 for the profit on this company. Right, this is the supplier. That makes it 770. So this is what it costs them from their supplier. We'll divide it by 115 again, times 100, and I'll explain why this is going on in a few seconds. So we get 670. So I'm just going, and I keep rounding up, by the way. I'm not rounding down at all. 670 minus 80, because they make less profit than the final seller. That gives you the 590. Divide by 115 times 100. And this is going to give us the manufacturer at 514. So we've got 514 divide by 115 times 100, and we now have the processor of raw materials at 447. Right, so 447 divide by 115 times 100, and we've got 389. Okay, so we're gonna go, oh wait, I didn't do something here. Yeah, I missed a figure. I'll restart it there. Sorry about this. You're right. Just to show you again, it's minus 1 divided by 115 times 100 is equal to, right, we got that clear. We got 870 minus 100. That's the first figure, so 100 divided by 115 times 100 is equal to, so we clear, we go 670 minus 80. Yeah, we're still keeping on track. Divided by 115 times 100. Okay, so now we're back at the manufacturer. So we go with 514 minus his cost, which is going to be way lower compared to everybody else. So it's going to be minus 50 divided by 115 times 100 gives us 403, right? Let's go 404. 404 minus his profit, which is going to be 40. This is going down to the raw resources, right? That's equal to, divide by 115 times 100. So it costs 317 at the raw material price, right? So wait one moment, 317. Now let's add everybody's profits back in on top of this, because this profit doesn't change. That profit always remains exactly the same. So what was the first profit that we removed? $40. Okay, so it's 40 plus 50 plus 80 plus 100. This is the cost of your $1,000 or 1,000 rand item. Do you notice a problem with it? Yeah, the figure is totally blown apart. The reason behind it is tax addition. The reason for this is simple. When you're paying your tax, it's an extra sum that must be paid immediately from your store or within a certain period of time. But regardless of when it is paid, you are always behind on receiving the rebate, right? So for example, if you are at the second level where you're the processor, you've purchased it and you've already paid tax. When you're selling it, you haven't yet reclaimed your tax. You have to first pay your tax on that item before you reclaim. So you're going to go and you're going to cancel them out, or you're going to make sure that you're making your money for the month. You're going to make sure you're making your money. So you're going to add it on top of the figure with tax, and that is why things get so convoluted. It ends up hyperinflating your economy. Now, a lot of people won't understand this, and it's quite simple. When you look at your payment on your items, you're going to see you paid $1,000 for 10 items. You're going to divide it by 10. It's going to be 100 each, and then you're going to add your profit. You don't go divide by 115 times 100, okay, plus profit, and then we go ahead. No, we're not doing that there, because we lose money at that rate. Because when we pay tax on top of all of this, it's going to negatively hit us, but it's already raising that figure by a certain figure regardlessly. Even if you did it the second way, you still end up with a higher figure than 587. You end up with somewhere like 687 or 697. So yeah, it becomes quite convoluted, and I can show you here quite easily. Let me go with it. It was 317, right? So we said we're going to add the tax back, right? So plus 15% equals plus 40. Plus 15% equals plus 50. Plus 15% plus 80. Plus 15% plus 100. And once again, we still end up with a hyperinflated figure. You can see that it's almost 300 increased. And regardless of what you say, this is the negative impact of paying value-added tax. This is one of the reasons for our economic crashes, and these are slowly draining our economies and harming us. Yes, our governments can't stop our economies from crashing by taking out tax. But on that note, when are taxes required? Immediately after the period of a disaster. Now you might be wondering why in the world after a period of disaster. For example, you had a war. You need to rebuild your economy. You need to rebuild everybody. So you need to take out a small figure from everybody and start rebuilding your infrastructure or upgrade your infrastructure to account for the number of new lives that will come into this world and things like that. There, upgrade the level of the education, so forth. And don't even get me started on education. Education's another mess. And last but not least on these lists was foreign trade. Now, foreign trade actually directly lands on these two, right? When foreign trade is moving through, it actually pulls these two around quite a bit. Now, as I said, when there's no, oh yeah, I didn't talk about this. So when there are no taxes, your costs deflate. In actuality, things get cheaper and cheaper over time. But that's only because taxes inflate your prices at such a large figure that you can never ever stop it, because they're adding 15% every time. When you don't have that and you're living at 15 Rand on everything that you want, and eventually you have to compete with the next guy who's jumped in with you, you're going to cut your prices by a Rand and everything is going to come down. It's not you're going to increase your prices by 80 cents or 90 cents instead of a full Rand to make up for your profit loss and hope that you make up in the number of items sold. In this market, you're just going to drop down by the figure because you have that ability to drop down. And every access that you make is every access that you make. Businesses grow, jobs are created, and technology is also a negative in this realm, but it is another whole situation to explain technology's impact, because it is just like foreign trade. So here we go. Foreign trade brings income to your market. That's because you're going to take an asset and you're going to trade it to another country. However, when you're trading to another country, you are either going to take in debts or you're going to take in assets. And currently we take in debts. Now, why is this just such a bad thing? Because of the owing situation between countries, it means that we're creating more credit. And what does credit do to your economy? It depreciates. So if your country has $1 billion, say for example, South Africa gives $1 billion Rand worth of gold to America for processing, right? Or for whatever purpose they exporting to America gold, $1 billion, $1 billion Rand, right? At the end of the day, they're going to give us an owing, right? And we can only owe on what we have 10% of. So we have to keep 10% in our own market as a holding share. So just because of that, there the debt and credit creation becomes a negative effect. But when it's asset for asset, so for example, if you're trading to America $1 million Rand and America is trading back to you $1 million Rand, then you have what's called an asset for asset trade. Because the debts are both being transferred at the exact same rate, nothing has moved on either side. This brings about a fair trade, and it actually brings about the merging of two markets. It's actually a peaceful trade. But no two countries are actually perfect asset. No two markets are perfect asset trades. That's because certain items are more important than others. For example, if you take out metals from the ground, metals are very important. However, they don't trigger as high as food. Food is the most important asset of all. So if you can sell food, it's one of the fastest selling assets. However, it sells way faster than the trade of the other country who sells metal. So you end up with a debt on the one side and an asset trade on the other. So one is going to take away money from the other. It's going to create a loss on the one side and a strength on the other. More assets into your market, less debt on the other market. And which market is winning? The poorer market's actually winning in this way. They're getting more assets and their debt is being pushed over to another country. And this is how it moves in that entire method. Now, if the debt becomes too bad, it becomes exactly like credit, and it causes the economy to depreciate at a faster and faster level. And depending on your trade outlets, if you have higher and higher taxes on incoming goods, you cause the prices to hyperinflate, causing you to have less money to spend internally. So altogether, by having these systems, you are penalizing people to make them spend more money. These are the reasons for our current economic collapse. Now, a lot of people have explained this with a lot of detail in other methods, with avoiding these three as being the core faults. Now, technology does cause some problems because it reduces the amount of labor required, but it increases the amount of produce produced. It actually reduces the price of living, provided it is not affected by credit or taxes. If it is affected by credit or taxes, even though it is reducing the price of the item, it is being hyperinflated and causing it to come out at a higher rate than it should. So instead of you getting that full savings, you're getting a saving that is inflated. So in other words, the saving is now not 50 cents, it's 2 cents on that entire cost. And it makes a big difference to the entire market when 15 million or 60 million people buy. 2 cents times 60 million is not 60 million, but it still is a figure that you have reduced it by. And 50 is 30 million, and you haven't reduced by 30 million, you're reducing by even less than that. The amount of money that can be spent further has become lower, so you are reducing the number of spending outlets that are available. So you are shrinking the ability of you to spend by hyperinflating your cost. And this is what happens when you have too much of tax creation. I hope this here was informative, and in case anybody wants to know how you solve these, well, number one is you force credit to be drawn on smaller and smaller figures, because we want equity of wealth, which is never going to happen. Just for reference, even if you try this here for 100 years, it will always fail over and over again, with some people being left in crippling debt over and over again. That's because credit can never ever fix the inequality of wealth. The inequality of wealth is based on pure luck and skill. Some people with skill make it, some people with skill fail. It's luck in that same factor with skill. Sometimes it's just pure dumb luck. Somebody can go and find some tin cans in a bin, squash them together and make a dress, and it can become a popular fashion item. Nobody knows what's going to happen, and that is how it goes. Failed items in plastic can make rolls of plastic that all of a sudden become the building blocks for the future, that there can be another way. Right? That's pure dumb luck. That is how it works when it comes to getting rich. So you can't really solve the inequality of wealth between two people. It's almost impossible to solve because there are so many things involved. And if you try to force the issue with systems like affirmative action and so forth, you end up skewing the market. So that, remember that person with skill at the top, where two people of skill, some get lucky, some don't, you end up forcing less and less of the skill to come through, which forces luck to play a bigger factor, and you cause the economy to become volatile. So yeah, that's another whole thing with affirmative actions, and those things, they cause volatility at the end of the day. It's not that you are only promoting the best of the best. You are promoting subpar individuals into positions which are meant for the best of the best, in order to try and balance out the best of the best with subpar individuals, and this ends up giving you negative effects throughout your market. You can have companies which spend way too much on wages. Example, Twitter, or X as it is now, was spending way too much on wages and was running at way too much of a loss. It required a culling to become more efficient, and that is how it works in general for your economies. So yeah, technology is also on the same note. I'm not going to explain technology as a negative and positive. As I said, economies can work on both sides. So as I explained it before, it helps in reducing the amount of work required and pushing that cost down. And when that cost comes down to a very low level, it means that you need less and less to live on. So what happens when you have a lot of technology is you require to work less and less the more people that there are. So you can employ 5 people at a far lower wage than you used to previously, because you're still employing the same number of people, you're just completing the same job far faster. So instead of employing one person to do all the work at a high rate, you're going to employ 5 people at a low rate, and now everybody earns a fair wage. But we also don't like doing that as an individual perspective, because we're all greedy in some way or the other. I've never met a person who is purely good to this type of level, where he would literally just give everything away without him having a profit involved. Sorry about that. I'm just thinking about the next statement with regards to all of these. These are quite heavy statements to actually balance out overall, and you can obviously tell why this is such a crazy thing. these are the factors that really harm our economies, and most of it is caused by our governance, right? We are meant to have governments who reduce the risk of us losing everything, but our governments have chose to increase that risk. I just decided to do this here as a quick informative piece on why we have the credit situation that we do, why we have the hyperinflation that we do, why we have the depreciation in value every year, why you need more money to live year by year. And you kind of get it. It's your governments. And yes, the super wealthy rely on credit heavily. So you can't just change this overnight because it has negative effects. In order to deflate the economy, you'd have to reduce taxes one at a time, and that's over a period of time. So, for example, you'll tell the government in the first phase, you've got 3 months to reduce VAT to zero. As they reduce VAT to zero over those 3 months, they'll reduce it by like 5% each month, obviously, to reduce it, and they'll have to do layoffs at that same period. Yes, it is a massive negative. More people are laid off, but it causes more job creation in a lot of other places. Remember, it's almost half the value of the economy. So, for example, if only 20 million out of all South Africans are employed, when we reduce taxes and we remove all of them, for example, just VAT, we now will be able to employ 40 million people because taxes aren't there anymore. And when we reduce tax even more and we take out the income tax, which is the next phase on top of that, we'll be able to employ 60 million people. And that is the entire population of South Africa. That's because taxes negatively impact the flow of money. And yes, big businesses don't pay tax because they have hypercredit depreciation. So you have to slowly make banks increase their amount of holding for tax loans, for loans. And this year will take a number of years to fix. So, for example, in the first year, they now need to hold 30%. This is going to force the bank to start building up its assets again. They'll reach 30%. Then at the end of the next year, they now need to hold 60%. This is going to make it really, really heavy on them. They're not going to be happy with it. They're going to fight with you. They're going to squeal. They're not capable of spending out more money. Nobody is able to take out loans as they wish. It's becoming really, really hard. They have to have so much of assets in order to balance it out. By the time you reach the fourth or fifth year, you balance it out to 100% assets required for loans with no inflated figures. You can only charge a single figure on the entire item. You make a profit, and that's no credit situation. And as I said, there's no benefit to lending. So people with large amounts of money don't want to lend to others because it has no benefit to them. This here makes your market move slowly, and it means that if you want to make the market move faster, you lend money with your profit being stated straight up front. People will ask for ridiculous figures like loan sharks, and they generally are the ones who take advantage of the no credit situation. So yeah, these are all the things that needed to be explained, and I have explained everything. Well, if you fix up 1 and 2, foreign trade, you won't have the debt situation. That will mean that it's bringing income or it's bringing assets, one of the two. If it's bringing income and assets, that is impossible. You'd either have one or the other. So that's how it works, and that's the whole thing at the end of the day. So that is still going to depreciate or inflate your economy depending on which way it's working, right? Foreign trade is one of the most crazy things. It is super volatile. It is super hard to explain. I would need a 2-hour video to explain it. But that is my quick explanation on why our economies are failing. I hope that you all enjoy, and I hope that you all put some pressures on your governments to change the world. I hope for a better world tomorrow. See you all then.